right, good morning, guys, and I hope that at this point you have turned in your population packet, and we are just going to take the last little bit of notes. Mr. McLean is going to take a look at those, give you guys completion grades. He might give them back to you today, but he might keep them. It's up to him how he wants to do it, but I did want to go ahead and finish the last of your demographic transition model so we can finish population and then move our way on to government. So what we've been talking about population is the impact population has on a society. So we looked at a large population, a small population. If you have a large elderly population, if you have a large youth population, if you have educational opportunities, why people may be feeling that they are disenfranchised, and the problems that you will have if you don't have equal access to education and economics inside a society. But what does that all mean? And that is what we actually look at with the 7 revolutions. And that is the whole entire point of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, is take a look at what does these trends mean? How should they impact the government? How do they actually impact your future? So for a population, what they came up with was this demographic transition model. And basically all it does is demonstrate that what happens over time is expected to happen over time in certain countries based upon where they are within this transition model. And basically it takes a look at populations in dependency ratios as they develop and become more and more wealthy, and as people become more and more industrial. There are actual 5 stages to this model. However, there has not been anyone who's actually entered stage number 5. So stage number 5 is a big, huge mystery, and we have no really true idea what stage 5 looks like. We do know what happens in stages 1 through 4. So we're going to take a look at stages 1 through 4. So basically, again, we are taking a look at the impact of birth rates and death rates in each stage and the relationship that it has with the number of people that are being born and when the number of people are dying with the advancement you have in your industrial state. So a country will progress over time from one stage to the next as certain social and economic forces are actually being met based upon death and birth rates. So every country has been placed within this demographic transition model, but not every stage again of the model but not every stage of the model has a country that meets its specific definition. So again, no one's in stage 5, and we almost have no one in stage 1. But we do see lots of people in between in stages 2 through 4. Okay, but again, stage 5 does have the potential to exist. We just don't know what it is. All right, so taking a look at stage number 1 is first. This is basically hunting gatherers. This is early subsistence farming. This is living basically on the edge. I am basically not sure if I'm getting food today. I don't know where my food is coming from. I am, it's all going to be a whole bunch of luck that if I survive throughout the whole entire day. Not only is it luck that I survive for the whole entire day, because I'm very, very concerned about getting food and water, but there are a ton of diseases that can impact me at any given moment. These diseases are going to be relatively lethal, and I don't have any real modern medicine to fight these diseases. What I do see in this model is always going to be the same. In stage 1, I have very high birth rates, and I also have very, very high death rates. So that means that my population is actually going to remain relatively flat. I don't really see a lot of increase or decrease in the population because your births and deaths are almost equal. So when you take a look at the side and you actually take a look at the graph of that particular model, you also will see that you don't have a lot of people that are going to be, elderly. What you have is a very large youth population, and then you're going to live kind of fast and you're going to live kind of hard, and then you're going to kind of die off. So you don't have a long life expectancy during this stage, and that's basically because there is not going to be adequate health care and you don't have adequate nutrition during this stage. Moving on to stage 2. Stage 2 is very early urbanization and early industrialization. So this is where I start to see people moving to the cities, but they're moving to the city with their big, big farming families. We are going to start to see some improvement in healthcare that's going to start to decrease our death rate, so people are going to live longer, and improvement in healthcare also is going to apply to improvement in child mortality rates. So people actually are going to be born, they're going to survive, and at the same time, we're going to have people living longer. So this this is going to be what we think is a positive for everyone. However, because again, there always is a however here. However, what we do see is cultural lag. The lag is going to occur because we are still going to see these very large farm families, because that's what everyone did. Everyone had 10 and 12 and 13 kids because they were necessary in order to help you farm. And again, they weren't economically hurting me because they were eating what they produced. And if they didn't eat what they produced, we were selling it. So I was actually making money. So they were economically beneficial. However, when I moved to the city, they are no longer economically beneficial, because what I now have to do is I have to pay currency for their food. So I have to work in a factory or somewhere in order to earn my wages, and then I got to spend those wages on food for these kids. They are expensive. So this cultural lag is what you're going to see, where you still have these big families inside of the city. So our population actually during this time period is going to start to grow. We are going to see this very bump in the beginning of that chart, where you see that population is going to start to grow, and then we realize, oh, I've made a mistake. I can't afford all these kids. And then people are going to start to have smaller and smaller families very gradually over time. So again, what you start to see is child dependency starts to skyrocket, and then it starts to lead to high costs for education, because I started to industrialize, and now I need to have an educated workforce in order to fulfill industrialization. So I need to make sure I get these kids out of work so they're not working in child labor anymore. What they're doing is they're going to school, and again, that is expensive. So I'm going to start to see a gradual decrease in my population and my birth rates, because school's expensive and feeding all these kids are expensive. At the same time, you're going to see a dramatic decrease in your death rates, and that's going to be because of the introduction of healthcare. So we're going to start to see more people being born and more people surviving longer, which is going to be represented in our graph on the side, because we are expanding. What you see now is the bottom and the middle are pretty full, and we do have some people that are going to reach elderly age as well. All right, moving on now to stage 3. This stage is called mature industrialization. This is where you have the mass majority of your population actually living inside of an urban center instead of in a rural center, which means that we have learned that large families are no longer going to be economically beneficial, and we're going to see a dramatic decrease in our birth rates throughout the period. Eventually, we might even see a very new and lower equilibrium with death rates as well. Basically, what you see again in stage 3 is that birth and death rates are going to fall. The population does, however, keep growing, because we still had a large number of kids in stage 2, and all those kids got married, and all those kids are still now having kids. Although they're not having 10 and 12 kids, and they drop down to having 3 and 4 kids, they still are going to be a lot of them that have 2 and 3 and 4 kids. So basically what we see is that this growth rate is going to continue. Now, at this time period, we think, again, large population, bad. However, all those farm families that moved to the city that had 10 and 12 kids, they are now adult, mature workers. That is a huge benefit to our society, because now I've got a workforce that's able to keep that business cycle moving, and that's going to be very beneficial to everybody. Not only that, that large, big workforce that's keeping everything moving is having less kids, which means that they are going to be able to spend more money, and things are going to be able to continue on. So I have a ton of good workers. I've got lots of workers in the economy. I'm going to have rapid economic growth, and I'm also going to see a dramatic fall in dependency. So what I start to see is that people can afford to take care of their kids. They can afford to take them to school. They don't have to work. They can afford to get them education and all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to start to see progress. So we think this is very positive. So take a look at our graphs there. We see our death rates, our birth rates are going to drastically decrease because we are all living in these urban centers, and we're also going to see our death rates are going to bottom out there as well, because modern medicine has advanced even more. But what this means is that our total population is going to start to increase at this time period as well, and that's going to be reflected on your side chart. See how it's nice and fat pretty much all over. So I no longer have the small elderly population, a large youth population. I've got a large youth population and working population, which is a positive, with a small elderly population, which is also going to be a positive. All right, so our demographic dividend again is going to be taking a look at increased economic growth due to the decline of birth and death rates, along with a change in the ages of distribution. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to take a look at the age of the distribution. It's not just the number itself, but how old people are within that number. The fewer births each year causes a country's young dependent population decline in relation to that working population. That is good. So again, note how big the working population 18 to 65 is in both visuals. That means lots of people are working and making money, which is good, good, good. So stage 3 is where people get rich, okay? This is a stage that most countries like to stay in forever. However, we do know that that doesn't last. So eventually we will move out of stage 3 and then you're going to move into stage 4. What you also see during this demographic dividend is the 4 things that are actually going to be required to maintain this high level of economic growth. So the economy is going to be able to take in and is also going to be very productive, and it's going to have lots of workers that they're going to be able to employ, and that is also going to include women. So our labor supply is large. I have lots of workers who are ready to work. At the same time, I'm going to have lots of savings because people are going to be making lots and lots of money. They had fewer kids, so their economic expenditures are going to start to decrease. So I'm going to have lots of money to fuel back into society and to buy more products. I also see human capital is also going to increase at the same time. So as my fertility rates start to decrease and if my birth rates start to decrease, people get healthier. When you're not having 10 and 12 kids, you are going to get healthier over time. And you're going to see few economic pressures at home because, again, I don't have to support these very large families on a factory wage or a manual labor wage anymore. I see small families being supported by white-collar jobs, things that are based on education, which means I actually get a higher wage, which is going to be very, very good for all of society. We also are going to see that parents are going to be able to invest more in their kids and in their resources, leading to better health, better education, and better overall everything. So all of this put together means an increased GDP, gross domestic product, for your nation, which is a positive, 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 because I start to see a decline in the strain on the economy because people are going to be able to take care of themselves. The barriers, however, to this demographic dividend, and of course there's always a negative, is it does not consider policies or programs that are implemented into that society. And this is where you see that one-child policy that was implemented by China. It does not apply here because they did limit the number of kids, which means that they weren't actually now able to benefit from a large working supply of workers. All right, stage 4. I'm going to do actually stage 4 and 5 in another video because my video cuts off at 15 minutes and we're already at 12. All right, so stay tuned for part 2 and we'll get to stage 4 and 5.